Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon is finally here. After a nearly 10-year wait, fans of the franchise finally have a new Armored Core game to jump into, and many want to know, how does it stack up? Traditionally, the Armored Core game has been a very niche franchise. It hasn't really reviewed that well, it hasn't been mainstream, it's always been a little too difficult for a lot of people to get into, but that's all about to change. Because today I am presenting to you what I would call a mecha masterpiece. Right out the gate, there's no need to jump into the reasons, we'll get into that, but this is a 10 out of 10, ladies and gentlemen. This is an absolute return to form for Armored Core. Currently at this point of playing the review copy, I'm at 84.3 hours played. Basically every waking moment since I've received this, I have been playing it non-stop. I've been playing it on my computer. I've been playing it on Steam Deck. If there was ever a time where I could be playing Armored Core and I wasn't, I was probably sleeping or in the shower. Those are pretty much the only two times. This is everything I have wanted for the last 10 years. When I first got into Armored Core, the vibe that you get when you're building your ACs, when you're diving on in and looking at all the stats and going through everything and deciding, oh, well, do I want a little bit more impact, or maybe I want to rely on the more effective range and the rapid fire capacity of this gun. No other game has really ever given me that feeling of customization, and that feeling is extremely alive and well in AC6. Already I have 5 different bipedals, 3 reverse joints, 4 tetrapods, and 3 tanks already built at a total of 15 ACs. Like I said, every waking moment has been spent playing this game. So instead of doing a more traditional review, because I'm going to be honest, I've been waiting 10 years, I'm already incredibly biased, we're going to talk about the things that I really like with this game. So jumping on in first to assembly. Assembly is everything you could want, but one of the nice things I like here is how the back units now work. We can have standard back shoulder units, which are going to be things like either a weaker grenade cannon, or in many cases it's going to be missiles, but via the OS tuning upgrades, you can unlock the ability to just have an entire second weapon back there if you want. So we have really nice flexibility here. You can either have a shoulder weapon that's just going to be a quick kind of fire and forget in most cases, or you can have a secondary weapon that you can swap to. So already we have some nice build variety going on there. On top of that, one of the new things I like on the arm stats, arms have always kind of felt like a piece that you slapped in there for armor. Obviously legs have a big impact on your loading capacity and whatnot, but looking over at our arms, we now have specific stats around firearm specialization and melee specialization, which is pretty interesting. So the firearm specialization is going to help with target tracking performance. Melee specialization actually corresponds to greater attack power. So when you're looking at your arms, as opposed to just going to big number better, on top of recoil control, you're also considering your firearm or your melee specialization. That leads to a lot more diversity when selecting your arm class. Your core and your head are still pretty standard. All of your scanning stuff has now been baked into the head, so your scan distance as well as your duration. Looking at some other stuff here, our FCS has been greatly simplified. Breaking this on down, we just have 3 main ranges here: within 130 meters, 130 to 260, and beyond 260. And of course, missile lock are standalone, which I think is important to note because there is an OS tuning upgrade that activates pure manual aim. Missiles don't abide by that. Missiles still have their lock-on time, and that correction is going to be dictated by this standalone stat. And then of course we have the expansions, giving you a little bit of flexibility in how you want to put a specific bonus to your build, whether you want pulse armor, which is going to be able to shrug off the incoming stagger damage and help to reset that gauge, which we're going to talk more about stagger later. Assault armor, giving you an incredibly potent option, able to do a ton of damage. I mean, 1500 damage. If you're right on top of somebody, this is the equivalent of hitting them in the face with like a grenade launcher. We have pulse protection, allowing you to put up a big dome if there's a bunch of attacks coming in and you're just struggling to dodge stuff. Or of course, terminal armor, just giving you a 2-second cheat death against a boss in the wonderful PvE experience of this game. But it doesn't stop there. The paint options are just as robust as ever. We are able to customize multiple aspects of all the pieces, our arm units, use our decals. If we go into let me pull out Beefy Boy for a second here. You can see that with this particular AC, I already have a giant core slapped on the legs. You can see, there's my decal. Beautiful, slapping that right on top of the mech. Or maybe something else, if I go to something I took a little bit more time on here, I go over to Thunderstorm. This is a whole shock-based AC, and alongside that, I decided to slap lightning bolts all over it. but the customization is incredibly alive and well. Going on over to the image editor, I'm working on this one. It's going to take some time. But the image editor is everything we'd want. I mean, even just pulling my logo together, it seems simple, but we had 33 separate layers here, pulling out individual pieces of it to help perfect that look. And then obviously when it all comes together, I have my FightinCowboy logo. But the full scope of customization that we have come to know in Armored Core games is incredibly alive and well in this game. And I would say that was the defining factor that set AC apart for me from so many other games that try to do the mech thing, is the sheer level of customization to build exactly what you want is honestly unmatched. And it even goes deeper than that. Not only the color, we can also change the material, the reflectiveness, or the luster of the part. We can make it super shiny, almost like it's chromed out, or we can make it dull. There's just so much here to dive into with the customization that it really is just phenomenal. Like, you're gonna spend hours and hours in this game just completely tweaking your mechs. Moving on from there, let's talk about OS system briefly, and then we will hop on into a sortie, do a mission. So the OS system is pretty interesting. We have a couple of base system unlocks, and these are things that are going to function in both PvE as well as PvP. Stuff like the boost kick, allowing you to do a little bit of damage just based on the weight of your AC. Yes, it's stronger the heavier you are. We have weapon bag. This is what's going to allow us to swap our weapons on in. Weight control, so we can sortie even if we're overweight, and then manually purge weapons. Manual aiming, which is for God gamers only, and then quick turning, which allows you to do an immediate 180 turn, just keeping better track of your target. Going into core expansions, we already covered all these: assault, pulse, armor, and then terminal. And then we have attack control and damage control. And these are just going to be passive stats. Now keep in mind, these are only for the PvE portion of the game, but as you play through, you're going to gain the OS chip upgrades, and you're going to fine tune what you prefer for your play style, whether it be more direct hit damage or more explosive damage or more kinetic control, whatever the case is. Now obviously I have everything unlocked at this point. By the time you complete New Game Plus and all of the attached arenas, you are going to have enough OS chips to fully upgrade everything. I think it's important to note that, keep in mind the passive bonuses, you know, more kinetic damage or damage mitigation. This stuff does not work in PvP whatsoever. So you're getting these upgrades strictly for your single player experience. Now, talking about the upgrades, of course, that is in the arena. Minor spoilers, you are going to see the arena list, but the arena is incredibly robust. 29 different targets, baseline targets that you can fight, and then some other targets that we can unlock a little bit later. We're not going to be showing you any of those, just the extremely obscure names, such as Analogous Subject 51013BE. But we have a lot of beef here in the arenas. And to be honest, I still don't have the trophy for all arenas, which means there's even more that I'm going to unlock on my New Game Plus 2 playthrough of the game. But these are just, the arenas are good. There's such good build variety here. We have, you know, we have our bipeds, we have our lightweights, we have our tanks, we have all sorts of enemies that we're going to be knocking on out. And what I really, really like about the arena system is anytime we're making an AC, we're just jumping in, we're fighting something. It's real fast. We can get a vibe for whether or not our build works, what we want to change. And obviously arenas are something that we've had in the previous AC franchises, but it's really nice to see how well it's returned in this iteration. The arena is back. Oh God, the chainsaw! Everyone's been wanting to see the chainsaw. There it is. Getting cooked by that thing. Unfortunately, Rummy is dead because Pile Bunker OP. But, you know, we're able to just go in, test out our build, get a little bit of money while we're doing it, and, you know, have fun with it. And I think that's what I'm liking so much here, is it's so approachable to test ACs this time around, I find, whether you're just jumping into the arena or jumping into the test bed or whatever the case is. Which, let's talk about the test bed. That's actually really nice. So when we go on into assembly here, we can just hit AC test and go on a quick test run with it. And I've spent a ton of time in here myself, and this is just going to give you basically a playground where we're able to run around. If we pull on up the menu, we can pull up a variety of enemies here: bipeds, tetras, trainer ACs, kind of similar to how we had this back in 5 in Verdict Day. But in particular, you know, if you're just trying to test out values on something, it's very easy to just pull up a target, pull up this test dummy, and then see exactly how hard I'm hitting. So, you know, I can come on in here, put this thing up to the point where it stagger breaks. And then, oh, look at that, 8102. I know how hard my pile bunker is going to hit against an average target now. And this is where it gets even better. From here, we can do assembly and swap out different weapons. we can swap out weapons right from this menu. So you don't even need to worry about like exiting out and exiting in or going back and forth. We're able to just freely swap in weapons, test them out. Very easy to pull numbers out, very easy to test different things and test different combos. And just more than ever before, it's really pushing to give us that further level of customization, to really just take things even further. Nest obviously is down right now because I'm an early access copy of the game, but as we know, PvP is confirmed to be 1v1s and 3v3 lobby bases. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to review that, but obviously I went to the PvP event and I had a ton of fun. I think one of the biggest things I'm liking here is the 3v3 system with the respawning is very much growing on me. I think back to my time in AC5 and Verdict Day, and typically fights were a race. You would pick the target that had the lowest AP that you knew you could keep up with. You'd burn through them as fast as possible to turn the fight in your favor, so you had a numbers advantage, and then you just kind of played it smart. Whereas now, with respawning targets, there is no like, oh, I'm dead, I guess I'm going to sit out for the next 5 minutes while this match goes on. But more importantly, you need to constantly be smart. You're swapping targets, you're always looking for opportunities. It isn't just a pure DPS race to take down the one weak link, because you know people are going to respawn. And on top of that, because the longer people are alive, the more points they're worth, you're looking to get kills on those targets that are even evasive or even tankier. So personally, I'm a really big fan of the arena, given there is not currently any ranked or unranked matchmaking. You just go in and you search for lobbies, kind of like old school Monster Hunter. But to be honest, I'm not against that. I think a big thing here is back when I interviewed the devs, they mentioned that they wanted the single player campaign to be the focus first and foremost. And I do think they've accomplished that very well. They also said they don't have immediate plans for any DLC. There's obviously regulation patches coming, but I think it's very possible that we'll see something in terms of ranked PvP down the line a little bit. Similar to how after the fact Elden Ring got the PvP arenas added in, I think it's very possible for them to add a ranked mode or unranked matchmaking into Nest. There's certainly no reason they couldn't. Moving on into the sortie. We are only going to be playing some early missions here. You're obviously going to see them, to keep in mind. You'll see the first few names here, but we're not going to be scrolling past the Chapter 1 stuff at all. But I will say the campaign is incredibly robust. Incredibly robust. We're just going to play through a couple of these. We have some quick missions, we have some sneaky missions, we have some missions like this that are just strictly cleanup. We have longer missions where we're fighting through an area and making our way up to a large, big boss, which on the note of bosses, huge fan of how the bosses work in this game. I feel they are significantly better compared to previous entries of the franchise. The boss fights feel very, very nice. You know, they're not just, I feel like when I think back to my experience with past games, I feel like a lot of the bosses were just kind of zipping all over the place, and it was kind of just like panic dodging. And there are some bosses that are very high mobility here, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to spoil it, but there are some bosses that are crazy. But I think just the additional clarity that comes along from this game actually having a production budget really adds to the experience and the boss encounters. I don't feel like they're just like this thing that's slapped in. Like, boss encounters have that same epic vibe that we have come to know from FromSoftware. And, you know, not to invite the Souls comparison, because, you know, personally this is very much Armored Core. I'm not going to go into any more than that. But I think when you look at the Souls games, there is a certain feel that comes along with those boss encounters. It feels very much like the boss fights in Souls games are an experience. You are set in this arena up against a massive foe. You have the music banging in the background. You're looking to overcome the target. And it's that same vibe here. That feeling of you're squaring off against something that's infinitely bigger and infinitely stronger than you, and you need to have the perfect dodges and everything else. This game brings that to the table, which honestly I'm a really big fan of that compared to some of the boss fights in the older iterations of Armored Core. In terms of the story, I've actually already seen some early reviews complaining about the story. I think these people have dumb opinions, to be honest. The story is very standard for a FromSoftware story. It's told predominantly through radio logs. It's told via the communication between missions and the sorties. It's told through battle logs that you'll find on destroyed ACs and MTs after combat. And there's just these little bits of lore and story and world that you're scraping together as you play that's helping to paint the picture of what is Rubicon, what's the story behind Rubicon. And furthermore, we do have branching storylines. Now, it's not incredible to the point where, you know, you're going to get to one mission and go off on an entirely different path, but there are multiple endings to the game. There are missions where you're going to align with one faction over another. And as I played through New Game Plus and I got to see the other side of the story, there were some major differences, and differences that I actually appreciated after going through the first side of the story even more. So all in all, I think the story is actually really, really good here. I think there is a lot to like about this story. It's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna spoon feed you a story in the same way that God of War or Horizon Zero Dawn would. And AC has never done that, so I don't know why some people went into this with that expectation. But the story here personally was dope to me. Especially kind of the conflict going on between the corporations, and the more you play, the more you end up aligning yourself with certain NPCs or certain corporations, and seeing how that all plays out and how that story kind of draws you in and how it aims to present itself. I actually think that's something that's pretty cool. Just in general, Armored Core definitely is not something that's usually known for its story elements. It's usually, you know, I'm here for the combat and to shoot stuff, and while that is still true here, I do think that there is more here than before in terms of story. When I think back to 4, which I just most recently played, we very much just had the briefings, and we still have that same briefing approach here. But between all the extra logs you're finding, the in-mission dialogue, the branch points, the discussions with NPCs that are happening, especially what I found really fun is there's a battle log system in this game where you can find certain logs from defeating key enemies, and in some cases defeating those enemies actually is going to even further the lore. When you encounter them, when you find them, they're hidden around, they're going to have some type of little quip that's going to come up, something they're going to want to say to you, and that's usually going to tie in even more. Just yesterday I finally got that the line about you know, why hide behind another's call sign, and I was like, it's the guy from the trailer, and you know, I beat him into oblivion. But it was cool to finally find that, because I did not encounter him on my first playthrough of the game. He was something that only came up as I was going through New Game Plus, and even then he was quite well hidden. So looking specifically at the level design, because we're talking about that a little bit with in terms of how stuff is hidden, we'll do attacking the dam complex here. Actually, no, we won't do that. Let's do wall climber. We can do wall climber, and I will pull on out. You know, let's pull out the cowboy. Yeehaw. As you're going through the levels, I found myself combing. And I mean combing through the levels for a couple reasons. One, as I mentioned, there's hidden enemies that have battle logs that you can find. As you unlock all these battle logs, not only are you getting little bits of lore, but as you accumulate them, you're also gaining access to weapon unlocks, whether it's going to be part unlocks or weapon unlocks. You unlock certain weapons from claiming all of these various battle logs. So obviously I want all the weapons, so I'm hunting down all the battle logs that I can find. But besides that, we also have chests that are hidden throughout certain missions, and those chests, sometimes they have armor, sometimes they have weapons. Either way, once again, it's more loot, and I love getting loot. So what I ended up getting is I just found myself kind of cruising through these missions and looking for everything I can, looking for all the hidden loot, looking for all the goodies, because I want to get everything possible to just further enhance my experience. On the note of graphical fidelity, this has been some weird point of contention with this game, and to be honest, I don't really understand it. Now, I will say that first and foremost, I am of the mind that artistic direction will always surpass just graphical prowess. I don't care how beautiful a game looks if it's a walking simulator. I also think art design is incredibly important in games. I think that the visual design and how we are pulled into a world is much more important compared to just something looking pretty. And you know, there's nothing against games that look pretty. Stuff like you know, Horizon Zero Dawn, for example. I think people love to bring up Horizon and bring up Forbidden West in terms of talking about graphical prowess, and those are certainly very pretty games. But at the same time, I feel that when we look at them in the scope of just the worlds, I feel like they have a certain how do I want to describe it? There's a certain genericness to those games, and not just those games in particular. I think this is just something with large open world games, whether it be Horizon or Assassin's Creed or whatever the case is, when everything is just like, oh, look at the, you know, the beautiful trees and the grass. Like, the world tends to take on this almost generic feel, I guess. And whereas in this game, like, yeah, we're just looking around. We're looking at buildings that are clearly abandoned, covered in snow, and starting to fall into ruin. Snow has mostly covered the streets. We see flaming wrecks off in the distance. It's a very different energy that you get from playing a FromSoftware game in general. They do an excellent job when it comes to world building and kind of setting the stage and really giving you a certain feel for the environment that you're in. And that's what I love about these games. A lot of people seem to think that the game needs to look a certain way, or, you know, it needs to Unreal 5, or, you know, it needs a new engine. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I have been playing this game on 4K at 120 FPS stable. That is not something I've ever seen from a FromSoftware game on PC. So with a game that offers this level of art direction and animation quality at that level of performance, I will take that any day over Unreal 5 make the faces look prettier, because honestly it's not needed. And I think this even kind of goes into the argument of looking at the Demon Souls remake. Did it look pretty? Yeah, sure, it looked very pretty. But like at the end of the day, I'm playing that game because it's Demon Souls, not because it looks pretty. And I think the same case is here too. This could have looked like, you know, old school Armored Core, where it's the opposite of pretty. And guess what? I still would have been playing it because it's Armored Core. Hear all the dialogue coming in from Walter as he explores. Besides that, some other things to talk about here. Woo! Tetrapods are amazing now. Tetrapods are honestly, they're growing as my favorite, but my way to just be like, dude, oh, I'm out of boost. The way that you can just now hover with tetrapods is honestly incredibly satisfying. Just because you're just like, I'm a floating little gunboat. It's incredibly enjoyable. Bipeds are still really nice on the ground. Reverse joints hopping all around and popping stuff off. Tank is as beefy as it has ever been. And I don't even know what to say. I'm just... Honestly, I love it. This review is being done at like the last minute, mainly because every time I have brought myself to try and do this review, instead I just get distracted with building more ACs and playing the game more. On a personal level, this is easily my game of the year. I think there's been some really good games this year, but like I said, I've been waiting 10 years for Armored Core. I've been wanting this for so incredibly long, and it's finally here. And like I said, 80 plus hours since I got my copy, and I have no intention of slowing down. There's still another new game cycle I got to go through. There's still more parts that I need to find, and we haven't even touched the multiplayer yet outside of that PvP event. Pistols are busted, by the way. They deal a shit ton of stagger. Bang, 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 bang. Which actually, let's talk about stagger system. So the stagger system is really interesting. This is the core gimmick of this game. And the way the stagger system works is as you attack a target, that yellow bar you see, that's stagger. That is going to build up on the target. Now the idea here is once you put them into a state of stagger, they are then incredibly vulnerable to damage. They enter a state where they're going to take what's known as direct hit. And while they're taking direct hit damage, you're going to bypass defenses. So this gives you essentially opportunities of burst on bosses, opportunities where you're supposed to really push out and get in as much damage as you can. And I found it to be really enjoyable. It gave almost an ebb and flow to the combat, not unlike that of Sekiro. It's not quite the same, whereas you need to constantly parry. I will say that just for a little showcase here, as you can see, after I shoot, if I don't follow up with damage, the stagger bar is going to start draining. And so we have stagger and we have a cumulative stagger. Regular stagger is going to drain after a short period of time. The overall accumulated stagger will take longer to drain away. Obviously on a boss, it's lasting for quite a while, but against a regular target, it won't quite last that long. Let's, oh, no, he's already going to wear away. I was going to try and give him assault armor. Hey, stay still. Come back here. But the stagger mechanic was really fun, just because it instead of just constantly chasing a boss around and trying to pop it off, which is a very common theme in the older AC games, now we very much have opportunities of damage that we are creating for ourselves. We have this system where we are pushing a boss to their limit, putting them into a state where they've knocked down, and then you're unloading everything you got, whether you're saving a weapon to try and do that big damage, or dropping in and letting out your assault armor, or whatever the case is. And I found it really satisfying because there was this gameplay loop where very frequently I would have a weapon that I pretty much was saving just for stagger, and that wasn't going to come out. But when I got that stagger, I was pulling out the pile bunker, I was pulling out the chainsaw, I was pulling out whatever it was, and throwing it on out and getting a massive hit of damage. And just the feeling when you make those attacks is incredibly satisfying. Talking about satisfaction, the sound design in the game, I mean, God, dude, some of the let me just real fast. Let's just go back. Let's just do it real fast. Just to further talk about the sound design, we're gonna go to AC test, and I want y'all to hear it's just my favorite thing. This is just my favorite sounding thing in the game. This is the pile bunker. A charged pile bunker on a target is so good. Stop running. Stop running. Get ready, here it comes. My Gatling's overheated because I swapped too soon. Oh God, that sounds so good. Just the guttural and the way it explodes and whatnot. And when you hit a boss with it and it's the final hit and it adds a little slow-mo effect onto it, it's like, oh, it's fucking satisfying. But yeah, there's nothing else really to say here. The music was great. The gameplay was obviously great. Honestly, the only thing that's missing is matchmaking arena, which I think is going to get added after time. Nice weapon variety. Some returning fan favorites that I don't want to talk about in a review because it gets a little spoilery. But I mean, y'all, if you've been waiting for Armored Core, to me at least, you're going to get absorbed with this. Everything about this game, it feels like Armored Core, but it was just finally given a budget, and I'm absolutely in love with it. So with that being said, I have a Let's Play series and like a buttload of guides and everything else that's also going up. So hopefully y'all enjoy content because there's a lot coming your way. Thanks for coming on by, and I'll see you next time.